Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, could there possibly be more going on right now? There probably could be, and there probably will be, actually. So, yeah, I guess we're just going to have to hang on tight for this. Let me start here, though, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. At my website, AmericanEducationFM.com, under the Government Documents tab, if you scroll down that huge list, which is now in the 40s when it comes to the number of PDFs that are available there, you'll notice that I've added a few more. I plan on going over at least two of these documents, or at least both of these documents in part, in this particular episode. The first one having to do with, and actually titled, Federal Prosecution of Election Offenses. This document is lengthy, as one might imagine, 200 and some odd pages. This is the 8th edition, dated December of 2017. But before I get to that particular document, let me read this post very quickly. This is from GreatAwakening.win, and it had to do with their take, this individual's take, this anonymous person's take, on why Trump wants everybody to vote early. It says, number one, he wants to get ahead of all of the dirty tricks, he says, planned by, or this person says, planned by Hillary, certainly within the next couple of weeks. I don't know why she would have any direct connection to any of this at this point, frankly, but who's to say? Number two, they said if the Dems try to impair any more GOP-laden counties with turmoil, he wants our votes locked in so no further turmoil can stop them. Number three, he's hoping Dem voters will see the GOP push to vote early, and they might try to match it. He's ahead of them on that, because any shenanigans the Dems might pull to possibly switch out Harris and/or Walz for other more popular candidates will have to deal with already cast votes that don't include any Dem write-in campaign to consider, and the already cast votes will be their backstop against any legal effort to suspend the election in that scenario. Folks will have already relied upon official ballots to exercise their right to vote. In essence, he's making them sleep in the Kamala bed they've made. And then number four, he's just trying to maximize his votes, which is working. They then said this, look, the Dems know he will win if the vote is fairly counted. It's a certainty by now. They are going to need to play some really dirty tricks to keep Judgment Day from coming. So, number five, he's trying to provoke the Dems into doing something so stupid and obvious that they can catch them in the act and destroy their corrupt cabal permanently. So, do what he is asking, vote now, they said. Okay, so you've heard my take on this, and I've been pretty clear on it, I think. The election's already over. Donald Trump's already won. There are more than enough votes that have already been cast up to this point, and even on voting day, for the individuals, again, who aren't voting early, they're far more likely to encounter more election day problems and voting problems than probably the rest of us who have, again, by and large, voted pretty cleanly, so we like to think. And as I've mentioned before, I mean, it's pretty clear that there are endless individuals and bureaucrats who work within these states in the United States that are openly saying that they're going to be counting overseas votes. It's going to take days. This is going to take time. It's not going to be known for days, if not a week or longer, as to who's actually won or who hasn't. And of course, the media is going to soak all of this in. And they're just going to love it because people are going to be glued to their TVs and they're going to be paying attention to all of this. And then the yelling and the shouting and everything else is going to occur. And it's going to get weird, I think. And I think that's putting it mildly. But even so, what happens, again, regarding federal prosecution of election offenses? Because here's what we didn't see in 2020. What we didn't see we didn't see judges taking this up. We didn't see prosecutors taking this up by and large. In fact, we saw the lawfare of what actually happened throughout our entire country against individuals who were bringing allegations of voter fraud to judges, to senatorial committees, of course, at the state level, very famously, of course, in Georgia and in Michigan, along with, I'm sure, other states as well, but certainly those two locations, of course, Arizona with Kari Lake's whole case in 2022, but also in 2020. The problem is that these politicians at the local level haven't changed. It's the same players, and they're doing the same things all over again. As you heard me say, I believe in the last episode, you still have Brad Raffensperger down there in Georgia, still telling everybody again that the votes are going to be counted days after the actual election day because overseas ballots need to be counted and they're counted last and that'll take time and blah, blah, blah. Of course, they can manipulate those numbers and those votes, and they can just straight up tell people that these are the numbers that we have in and this is the result and you just have to deal with it. Again, it boils down to local judges and local prosecutors. Are they going to want to take these cases knowing that they'll be blackmailed or bought or sold and then potentially have their bar license removed if they attempt to take up such a case? This is the problem in our country, which means, really, do federal prosecution of election offenses actually take place on a grand scale? Because based on the laws here, they're supposed to, but they aren't. So again, if the federal government, in particular, I should say at the state level, the state government isn't doing what they're supposed to do, who holds them accountable? And I think the thing that they have forgotten is that we are quite literally at war, certainly in a legal sense, and on actual paperwork, actual documentation stating that we are a nation at war. Which means, again, election interference crimes, are they not war crimes then? And doesn't that mean that military tribunals have to take place for state officials, whether they be governors, election officials, secretaries of state, whoever it may be, right down to the individual packing a ballot box filled to the brim with fake ballots, all filled out by the exact same person for the exact same candidate or list of candidates. Again, I think that the military has to get involved here. I think the military hopefully is already involved, as even Donald Trump has stated, not the TV military, so to speak, and the TV generals, but the real ones. They have to be using the NSA, Space Force, and other agencies to their benefit to go after these people nationwide. They have to, because we can't see all of this happen again the way that it happened in 2020. So with all of that aside briefly, let me just get into this document because it's rather cut and dry as to what is supposed to happen. Unfortunately, as you might imagine, it didn't happen in 2020. So there are numerous crimes here, and numerous things that are supposed to be taking place, of course, that didn't take place back in 2020. So here we go with this document. Again, if anybody wants to follow along, you can download the PDF on my website under the Government Documents tab. I'm on page 2 of this, where it has 3 bullet points, and it says the following here. And I'm going to read a little from this document, so get comfortable. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's rather lengthy, but even so, there's a little bit from this that I do want to read. It says there are several reasons why election crime prosecutions may present an easier means of obtaining convictions than do other forms of public corruption. Again, the irony of this is amazing because the evidence that existed in 2020 was overwhelming and it was on film. And that wasn't enough to prosecute these individuals. I know for a fact, of course, that some people got prosecuted. I mean, some people were arrested and detained, but even so, many were not, at least not to our knowledge. So these 3 bullet points say the following. Number 1, election crimes usually occur largely in public. Yeah, everybody can see them. Whoops, the machine's broken. Put them in box number 3, put your ballots in box number 3, and then we will just count them later on in the day when we get our machine working. Don't worry, you can go home now. I mean, that line is being said, like I've said before, numerous times this year already, before Election Day. And it's the same line we heard in 2022. It's the same line we heard in 2020. They're saying the same thing all over again. The second bullet point says election crimes often involve many players. For example, successful voter bribery schemes require numerous voters. Ballot box stuffing requires controlling all the election officials in a polling location, and illegal political contributions generally involve numerous conduits to disguise the transaction. Yeah. Again, I love this because this was mentioned we saw this in 2020, but we didn't see handcuffs. The last one here says election crimes tend to leave paper trails, either in state voting documentation or in public reports filed by federal campaigns. Yes, all three of those things happened in 2020, and there are still people screaming at the top of their lungs that there was no voter fraud. All of this was caught on film. All of it. By citizens, by American citizens. It says Section B here was titled Types of Election Crimes. Number 1, election fraud. It says election fraud usually involves corruption of one of the three processes: the obtaining and making of ballots, yes; the counting and certification of election results, yes; or the registration of voters. Yeah. That's it. I don't even have to read any more. So again, to anybody saying that 2020 wasn't stolen or there was no election fraud or hasn't been election fraud, the very first sentence in their own definition of what is election fraud means that there was, because there's ample evidence for all three of those points. It goes on, it says election fraud is generally not common when one party or one faction, rather, of a party dominates the political landscape. Rather, the conditions most conducive to election fraud are close factional competition within an electoral jurisdiction for an elected position that matters. Thus, in a jurisdiction, when one party is dominant, election fraud may nevertheless occur during the primary season as various party factions vie for power, it says. It says most election fraud aims at ensuring that important elected positions are occupied by quote-unquote friendly candidates. It occurs most often when the financial stakes involved in who controls public offices are great, as is often the case when patronage positions are a major source of employment, or when illicit activities are being conducted that require protection from official scrutiny. As noted, election crimes will typically coincide with other types of corruption. Yes, of course. Who doesn't know this? Do judges and lawyers not know this? This is crystal clear. It goes in, again, more examples. Number 2 here is patronage crimes. Number 3 is campaign financing crimes. Number 4, civil rights crimes. And then it gets down to Section C here on page 5, which is federal jurisdiction. And this, again, this is where it gets a little hinky, because if the states aren't doing what they're legally obligated to do, which we know that many of them didn't and don't, where does the federal government get involved? And, of course, if the federal government doesn't get involved, when does the military get involved? Because we know that the Supreme Court didn't do anything either, which is out of the ordinary. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's completely unconstitutional, unless, of course, we were in a continuity of government. And in fact, the military is in control here. So again, Section C on page 5 says federal jurisdiction. The federal government asserts jurisdiction over an election offense to ensure that basic rights of United States citizenship and a fundamental process of representative democracy remain uncorrupted. Election crime cases tend to be long-term projects, focusing on individuals with different degrees of culpability. The ultimate goal is to move up the ladder of culpability to candidates, political operatives, public officials, and others who attempted to corrupt or did corrupt the public office involved. Yes, this is big. Because again, who wants to go up against a governor? Who wants to go up against a Secretary of State? We didn't see that the last time. But clearly, based on this document, and based on these laws, this is what is supposed to happen. You start small, and then you work your way all the way up the ladder, as they very clearly here say, and then ultimately you're supposed to round up everybody who's involved. Everybody. There's no immunity to any of this. What was the woman's name in Georgia? The fat black gal. bless her heart, although she was an election stealer and engaged in election fraud. Her name was Ruby something. You remember that woman in Georgia? The old, what was it? Of course, the burst water pipe lie and all that nonsense. And, we're just going to count the votes over here behind this curtain, and we're going to run all of the ballots through these tabulators that were magically hiding underneath this, this curtain-covered table and all of that stuff. Remember all of that from 2020? I believe that woman, that Ruby gal, I believe she was arrested, if I'm not mistaken. And where is she right now? Because she's a perfect example of a woman that you bring into a room, you detain her, of course, and then you start to question the ever-living hell out of her. And you go right up that ladder. Who told you to do this? Who gave you these ballots? Who's in charge of this particular election location? And who is it that trained you? And then again, you just keep going up. And then you get those people. And then you squeeze those people. And then you go all the way up. There's no way in hell that this doesn't end in the lap of a Brad Raffensperger or Governor Kemp in Georgia, 100%. So you're talking about, then again, local, town, city, county, and then state officials. This is what we didn't see, unless, of course, this in fact happened the last time around, but we just weren't shown, or we weren't told, because this is a larger sting operation that's taking place and the people can't find out yet. And the sting is still going on. That's my hope, of course. Because as I've said, and as you know, and we all feel it, if there's no accountability here for these crimes, then what are we doing? We're wasting our time. I mean, we're voting in another fraudulent election yet again. Take Michigan, for example. Again, another ripe state filled with corruption from top to bottom. And again, the hubris of these people is also astounding. But you can see the evil in their faces. Dana Nessel should be arrested. Gretchen Whitmer should be arrested, and they should hang by the neck until dead because they were involved in this. There's no way that they're insulated from not knowing that election fraud is taking place in their state. Endless citizens testified under oath, again to state committees, that there was election fraud, what they were witnessing, what they were seeing. That's what that was. Rudy Giuliani, of course, was involved in bringing that to the public, as was Jenna Ellis. Both of them, of course, got squeezed. Jenna Ellis ended up turning and crying her eyes out, and I'm so sorry, I thought there was election fraud. She should have just said there clearly was. There was more than ample evidence. What I've read in this document alone proves that there was voter fraud. I have a memory. I mean, that's all a person has to have. You just have to remember what went on and remember all of that evidence that was coming out. So yeah, there was voter fraud. But no one should be fined or lose their legal license because they questioned such a thing, let alone have to pay millions of dollars like Giuliani allegedly, and lose your property and your personal belongings and everything else. It's beyond evident here that that was the case. Of course, the same thing happened with Lynn Wood. They went after his law license also and are still doing the exact same. So yes, there was election fraud. It's blatantly obvious. But you have to go all the way up the ladder, and you have to get the people at the very top. Are there people in the FBI involved in this? There have to be. DOJ? Absolutely. The document goes on here on page 6. It says, federal jurisdiction over election fraud is easily established in elections when a federal candidate is on the ballot. Well, you'd sure think so, wouldn't you? It says the mere listing of a federal candidate's name on a ballot is sufficient under most of the federal statutes used to prosecute voter fraud to establish federal jurisdiction. This generally occurs in what are called mixed elections, quote unquote, when federal and non-federal candidates are running simultaneously. In such cases, the federal interest is based on the presence of a federal candidate whose election may be tainted or appear tainted by the fraud, a potential effect that Congress has the constitutional authority to regulate under Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, and the 17th Amendment. It says the absence of a federal candidate from the ballot can present federal law enforcement with special challenges in attaining federal jurisdiction over election crime. Those challenges can sometimes be met provided the investigation focuses on identifying additional facts that are needed to invoke application of the federal criminal laws that potentially apply to both federal and non-federal elections. These generally include election frauds that involve the necessary participation of public officers. Notably election officials, it says, acting under color of law, quote unquote, voting by non-citizens, fraudulently registering voters, or paying voters in violation of state law. Again, all of that happened. all of that is still happening. These people have to go to jail or hang because it's sedition. It says federal jurisdiction over campaign financing offenses under FECA also derives from Congress's authority to regulate the federal election process, while a number of provisions added to FECA by the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, BCRA, address financial activities by state and local parties that are generic in the sense that they simultaneously benefit both federal and non-federal candidates. Federal campaign financing law does not apply to violations of state campaign laws. Most states have enacted laws regulating and requiring transparency of campaign financing of candidates seeking state or local office. While violations of these state statutes are not by themselves federal crimes, they may be evidence of other federal crimes, including Hobbs Act, Travel Act, mail or wire fraud, or other offenses. I have a quick question regarding money. How is it legally, and I would like somebody to explain this to me, but how is it legally that someone like Miriam Adelson can give $100 million to Donald Trump and that not be illegal? How is it that someone like Elon Musk can give however many millions he gave to Donald Trump for his campaign and that not be illegal? I was under the impression that there was only so much that you could donate to a person's political candidacy. I thought that's why Dinesh D'Souza went to jail, because he just gave like a few dollars more over some like $9,000 or $10,000 limit to a friend of his who was running for office, if not Donald Trump himself. Wasn't that the case with Dinesh D'Souza? So why is it again that somebody can give $100 million or millions and millions of dollars to a person's campaign and not go to jail? I understand somebody'd say, well, Sean, she's Jewish. Well, yeah, I know that. But even so, it seems odd to me. It says here in Section D, advantages of federal prosecution. It says the Constitution confers upon the state's primary authority over the election process. That can be a problem if there's fraud. It says accordingly, federal law does not directly address how elections should be conducted. State law historically has regulated such important activities as the registration of voters, the qualifications for absentee voting, the types of voting equipment used to tabulate votes, the selection of election officials, and the procedures and safeguards for counting ballots. It says these factors might suggest that the prosecution of election crime should be left primarily to local law enforcement. Well, what if they're corrupt? Then what? It says, however, local law enforcement often is not equipped to prosecute election offenses. No kidding. Federal law enforcement might be the only enforcement option available, or the military. It then says this. It says, 4 characteristics of the federal criminal justice system support the federal prosecution of election crimes despite the primary role of the states in most facets of election administration. And it's got 4 bullet points here. Number 1, federal grand juries, the secrecy requirements of which help protect the testimony of witnesses who tend to be vulnerable to manipulation and intimidation. I can't help but think of the Ruby gal in Atlanta, Georgia back in 2020 yet again. Again, I wonder if she's in witness protection because she's a witness to state-level voter fraud. And I bet she squeals like a pig, too. The next bullet point says federal trial juries, which are drawn from a broader geographic area than are most state juries, and thus lessen the possibility of local bias. The next one says resources to handle the labor-intensive investigations generally required for successful prosecution of election crime. And then finally, detachment from local political forces and interests. Again, if you're engaging in a sting operation having to do with 2020 election fraud, you can't tell the people. The most that Donald Trump has said is that there was election fraud, that they gave it to Joe Biden with the media's help, and that's essentially it. But everybody else, by and large, is pretty hush-hush on the whole issue. We know that there was voter fraud in 2020. We know what they're doing now, because it's the only game they have left to play, which is why they're in Zootsfang. It's the same thing. They've been forced to cheat, because cheating's the last move they can make, and cheating's illegal. So again, they have to be catching these people, but it makes sense reading this that they wouldn't be telling people, because it's a sting operation. You can't tell people. You have to keep this close to the vest here. Now I want to keep going, because there's more here, I think, which is worth sharing. Again, you have access to this document just like I do. I find this particular document fascinating. Section E here, I'm on page 8. It says federal role, prosecution, not intervention. It says the principal responsibility for overseeing the election process rests with the states. With the significant exception of violations of the Voting Rights Act involving denigration of the right to vote based on race, ethnicity, or language minority status, the federal government plays a role secondary to that of the states in election matters. It is in the states that have primary authority to ensure that only qualified individuals register and vote, that the polling process is conducted fairly, and that the candidate who received the most valid votes is certified as the winner. Again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this has to be a sting operation to catch people in every state. It seems like a massive flytrap here. You let the local people at the state level engage in as much fraud as humanly possible while watching them all do it, and then you catch them when it's all said and done. But this has to be in every state. And again, the American people can handle this. We can handle the truth. If you end up rounding up numerous governors, which isn't going to happen, I hate to be a pessimist on this, but I don't think that's going to happen. There might be some who go down, but getting all of them who are involved in this, I don't know. But again, if you want to clean out our country, that's a great way to do it. You just set that trap and let them all walk right into it. It says the federal prosecutor's role in matters involving corruption of the process by which elections are conducted, on the other hand, focuses on prosecuting individuals who commit federal crimes in connection with an election. Deterrence of future similar crimes is an important objective of such federal prosecutions. You would think so. You hang one of them, the rest will go home. You'll have a suicide weekend, Q post, quote unquote. And then that will probably happen because these people don't want to go to jail. It says, however, this deterrence is achieved by public awareness of the department's prosecutive interest in and prosecution of election fraud, not through interference with the process itself. Yes. Again, I like that. I like that paragraph. We need to see this because that's the deterrent. See, they know this. It's the old Vlad the Impaler meme. If you just impale a few of them, the rest will leave. This is what has to happen. You have to have a Gretchen Whitmer, a Brian Kemp. These people have to hang. And when they do, everybody else will shit themselves. This is a good thing. But it has to happen. That's the piece that everybody here is waiting to see, basically. It says, because the federal prosecutor's function in the area of election fraud is not primarily preventative, any criminal investigation by the department must be conducted in a way that minimizes the likelihood that the investigation itself may become a factor in the election. The mere fact that a criminal investigation is being conducted may impact upon the adjudication of election litigation and contests in state courts. Moreover, the seizure of federal authorities of documentation generated by the election process may deprive state election and judicial authorities of critical materials needed to resolve election disputes, conduct recounts, of course, and certify the ultimate winners. It says, accordingly, it is the general policy of the department not to conduct overt investigations, including interviews with individual voters, until after the outcome of the election allegedly affected by the fraud is certified. So I found that fascinating too. The election has to be over with completely. It has to be certified. Then they can conduct their investigations. Now let's get in a time machine and go back to 2020. Immediately after the election, in November of 2020, people were immediately taking to the streets. Lawyers were getting together saying that there was voter fraud, certainly those that were advocating for Donald Trump. And then they were making the rounds across the nation, as was, of course, Mike Lindell and everybody else. And they were engaging in all of that for the general public to show them that there was actual voter fraud. But also, of course, that it was overseas voter fraud, that you had votes on the internet going, again, through a wireless network, overseas to Europe, specifically Germany, if memory serves, and then coming back. And if you saw any of those Mike Lindell presentations as I did, you remember the map that I'm referencing from my brain pan here, which is a map of the world, and then you see again all of these votes leaving the United States on these lines that represent, again, the wireless network, and then all of them coming back. So they're actively changing votes in a foreign country regarding our country. But again, even though that was for the public, and that was for public consumption, and again, these individuals, by and large, again, some of them worked at the state level, like Tina Peters in Colorado, she was in possession of proof of voter fraud and these fraudulent ballots. And then, of course, they are attempting to send her to jail for 9+ years or whatever it is, because they're basically saying you didn't hand over the documents when you were supposed to. Well, if it was fraudulent, and the election had already taken place and she had the evidence, she was supposed to keep it because they don't want the states to get rid of those documents. It's called evidence. That's why she was in possession of those documents. But trust me, I mean, I don't think there's any way that she didn't hand those documents over to a real investigative body. I think that she did. She had to have. There's no way that she's just walking around with those documents in a briefcase by herself. I mean, coming after her in Colorado and engaging in retribution, regarding her role in, again, keeping this evidence and these clues of actual voter fraud is her job. But there's no way that she would be the only one that would be in possession of that. Certainly not, again, if there was a real sting operation taking place. But again, the retribution that came her way after the fact, that's a separate corrupt game all in itself. I mean, these are individuals, again, on the bad guy's side, trying to engage in a deterrence from a legal lawfare standpoint to keep people from doing the thing that they're supposed to do when voter fraud is taking place. It's disgusting. But here's the last section I want to read, and then I have some audio on this that I want to play, because again, the gaslighting on this voter fraud is astounding. And this particular section, this last section here that I want to read on page 11, this is also interesting. This is section G, and it's titled Investigative Considerations in Election Fraud Cases. It says, when investigating election fraud, 3 considerations that are absent from most criminal investigations must be kept in mind. Number 1, respect for the primary role of the states in administering the voting process. Number 2, an awareness of the role of the election in the governmental process. And number 3, sensitivity to the exercise of First Amendment rights in the election context. As a result, there are limitations on various investigative steps in an election fraud case. It says in most cases, election-related documents should not be taken from the custody of local election administrators until the election to which they pertain has been certified and the time for contesting the election results has expired. This avoids interfering with the governmental processes affected by the election. So again, Tina Peters is a perfect example. She was hanging on to the documents even after the certification took place and kept hanging on to the documents, but then she was supposed to give them back, but then she said no because she knew what they were going to do with those documents. They were going to destroy them. So again, I doubt that she would not make copies and then give them to someone. She had to have done that. It goes on, it says another limitation affects voter interviews. Election fraud cases often depend on the testimony of individual voters whose votes were co-opted in one way or another. But in most cases, voters should not be interviewed or other voter-related investigation done until after the election is over. Such overt investigation steps may chill legitimate voting activities. They are also likely to be perceived by voters and candidates as an intrusion into the election. Indeed, the fact of a federal criminal investigation may itself become an issue in the election. And here's the final paragraph. It says, some election frauds implicate a voter who participates in a voting act attributed to him or her. Such cases include vote buying schemes, absentee ballot fraud, and the like. Successful prosecution of those who organize such schemes often requires the cooperation of either the voter or the person who attempted to corrupt or take advantage of the voter. Accordingly, again, I think of old Ruby in Atlanta. It says, accordingly, federal prosecutors should apply standard department policies regarding charging decisions when contemplating charges against voters who cooperate and testify truthfully in cases involving organizational voter fraud. Unquote. All you have to do is get a few of these people and you pinch them and you just squeeze, and then they'll give up the goose. They'll give up their managers, the people who taught them, the people who told them what to do, any documentation they have on any emails that were exchanged. And let's face it, these people are so stupid, they probably have their crimes in writing. And then it goes all the way up the ladder. That actually now leads me to this. I'm going to get away from this document, but I'm telling you, you might want to give this document a read. It really is fascinating because it's, at least to me, there seems to be ample evidence that there is a sting operation taking place. They had to certify the 2020 election in order to do an investigation. That investigation has probably been going on the entire time. So much so that it's probably going on right now. I mean, look at, again, all of the voter fraud news that continues to come out. It's rampant. It's still happening. But again, these local nitwits and these old bags who are running these, these voter tabulation machines, like I said earlier, all they're doing is coming out into the crowd like they did in Illinois the other day, which again was on film. And she's going, well, you can go home or you can come back or you can stay in line and you can vote, but we're just going to ask that you put your ballot in this box over here and we'll count it later. That's voter fraud. If your machine doesn't work, then you can't do the only thing that you're there to actually do, which means the people running that particular polling place can't do the one thing that they're actually supposed to do, not to mention all of the machines that are flipping votes. That's happening in Texas. Hell, that's happening probably everywhere. In fact, before I get to the audio, which comes from New Mexico, and Cicely sent this my way, and it had to do with the Dominion voting machines. I can't wait for you to listen to this because you're going to hear the way that these people talk down to everybody who's listening to them. Again, their Secretary of State's an abomination. You'll hear her voice. I think she's in it also. And then, of course, Dominion voting machine representatives. And what's Dominion Voting right now doing? I mean, as a company, what are they doing right now? They're threatening everybody. They're basically saying, again, if you say that our machines don't work, we're going to sue you into the ground. And then, of course, they use their entire justification for doing that by saying that they won a massive lawsuit, hundreds of millions of dollars, from Fox News in a defamation lawsuit because Fox News was alluding to the fact that Dominion voting machines didn't work in 2020. Well, let's face it, many of them didn't. Lots of them did. They seem to work where I vote. But again, why do they have to work everywhere then? And why does anybody believe that just because they work in some places, they wouldn't work in others? It's absolutely ridiculous. But there was this from the Federalist. And again, I have to say something about the state of Oregon very quickly. I've never been to Oregon. Like any state in the United States, I'm sure that there are very gorgeous places within Oregon, okay? But what is it like to live in Oregon and know that you're basically the armpit of the United States? I mean, I don't hear anybody say anything positive ever about the state of Oregon. Do you? Anytime, again, it almost proves that everybody in the state is corrupt or a criminal or should hang until dead. Because every time the state of Oregon gets brought up in any context, it always has to do with fraud or crime or what have you. Murder, drug addiction, you name it. It's just, yeah. It's the butt of every joke. No one ever goes, come and visit Oregon. You don't see those commercials on television, do you? But the title of this, again, from the Federalist, was Oregon's voting portal appears to let anyone cast an overseas voter's ballot with just his name and birthday. It says the following here: Oregon's voting portal lets anyone log into an Oregon resident's voter account using only his name and birthday, and once logged into the voter's account, it appears that a bad actor could use the online tool to cast the ballots of overseas voters by email. It says, for that matter, the system doesn't appear to protect against someone fraudulently casting ballots in the names of domestic voters by claiming to be overseas. Again, who? I'm gonna sound like an owl. Who doesn't think that voter fraud is taking place here in Oregon, statewide? Isn't that what this is? Isn't this a giant admission that your entire state's election process is a criminal organization? It says Oregon's online elections portal, My Vote, quote unquote, lets anyone access residents' registration information by entering a resident's first and last name and birthday, which are often available online. From there, a fraudster could hypothetically mark a resident's ballot, claim he is an overseas voter, and then submit the resident's marked ballot by fax or email, according to whistleblower Kara Tampkin, an Oregon resident who showed the Federalist how the portal works. And they have pictures of the portal and, again, what it looks like and where you fill out the information. Again, it's a giant admission that there is voter fraud. I don't know what else to say. There's this now, and this was from KOB.com, KOB4, your trusted source in news. From New Mexico, titled, How Secure Are Dominion Voting Machines in New Mexico? Now again, it's a local news affiliate. What do you think they're going to say about Dominion voting machines? Are they going to question their integrity? Of course not. They'll get sued into oblivion. They'll be sued into non-existence. Which means, what do you think this story is about? And one last thing again before I play this. Listen to the condescending tone of voice that these people have when it comes to anybody who again questions Dominion voting machines or voter fraud in general as being a very real thing. They're just like, I can't believe that anybody would think voter fraud's real because we have a process for eliminating a broken machine. Well, good for you. But at the end of the day, this just boils down to human error also. Intentional human error as well. Do people not think that that's possible? My God. All right, here we go. Here's the audio in 3, 2, 1.
And when voters go to the polls, it's likely that you'll see your ballot disappear into a Dominion voting machine. Bernalillo County is using hundreds of them. After multiple lawsuits for false claims about the machines, our 4 investigator Ryan Laughlin wanted to know exactly just how secure they are.
I joke it sounds a little like a casino in here. Every time a ballot gets accepted, you hear that ding.
It's no casino, but that doesn't mean the stakes aren't high.
If there is an issue with the particular tabulator, we will isolate that one and quarantine it, and that will not be utilized back into circulation for that whole election cycle, if ever again.
On Thursday, 4 investigator Brittany Costello showed us how these voting machines are getting tested before they go out to polling locations.
Who are they manufactured by?
These are Dominion voting systems.
Is that a dirty word today?
Well, it really shouldn't be because they just won a $750 million defamation lawsuit.
Dominion voting systems had been the target of misinformation after the last presidential election. 12%. After Dominion won a massive defamation lawsuit against Fox News, we wanted to know exactly what it would take to manipulate one of these machines.
The tabulation happens on a memory card that goes into one of these slots.
That's correct. So we have 2 cards in each machine. One is simply just a backup card.
Never connected to the internet, Nathan Jaramillo, an elections administrator for Bernalillo County, says after a machine is tested, the memory card is sealed inside the machine with a unique code, and it stays that way until after the election.
So poll watchers will be able to see the numbers and make sure that everything matches. Additionally, the cards that go in there, it's not just a USB stick, right? It's a little bit more complicated.
That's correct. So I'll open one of the doors there. So you can see there's a special type of card there. It's not like a normal flash driver. It's proprietary to the software that's here. And it has encryptions on it as well. So it's not like someone can just put in their own card there and it's going to run a different type of program to report.
On top of that, the machine records whenever a card is removed. And after the polls close, there's a strict protocol.
What does that process look like?
So a chain of custody essentially identifies who is removing the seal, who is identifying where the card is being taken, put into another type of bag being deployed to our location. A chain of custody is identifying that individual, handing them off safely and securely to our staff, and then another chain of custody to the individual who's actually uploading the cards and the time of the card being uploaded.
That is when we get to see results come back on election night. And if there are any irregularities in New Mexico, there's always paper ballots to fall back on.
Do you have confidence that when the results come out of these things that they are accurate to the way people voted?
Absolutely. I am very confident that the results and the votes are reporting correctly here in Bernalillo County.
Fail-safes in place to make sure the count matches the ballots that go into these boxes. Ryan Laughlin, 4 Investigates.
Our 4 Investigates is still working on all angles for election night. So we wanted to know what instances of voter fraud are there here and why are voters having some of their information published online? Ryan and Brittany will bring us team reports leading up to the election.
Oh, so now they're interested in voter fraud stories. So they just did a story about how there's no voter fraud with these Dominion machines, but they're still doing an investigative report on citizens' takes on voter fraud and what they're witnessing at their polling places. Interesting. Not to mention, and to be a little superficial, what is it with these news guys' voices? I mean, what is it with that? Do they always talk like that? Clearly, there's this and there's this, and, well, there's a little bit of this too. I mean, who in the hell talks that way? Who speaks like that? I'm going to the bathroom to take a shower. I'll see you at 11. Who does that? My question with that entire report is the following. What's on the card? Yes, I understand that they say that there's this, again, it looks like a credit card. There's a credit card that goes into every single machine, and then every single machine is supposed to tally those ballots and those numbers for those people on that card. But what's on the card in the first place? And you heard him say, those cards change hands. Well, they're unique to the machine alone and the company and whatever else, but they change hands. So who's to say that the person who's doing the final tallying at the computer or wherever they're doing the final tallying, after all of those chain of command handoffs, so to speak, who's to say that the person who's doing the final tallying doesn't have their own card in their possession already that's preloaded? See, that's the interesting part too, is that the public, by and large, is never told who these people are. We're not told their names. We don't know who's actually doing the final tallying, to where, again, those numbers ultimately go, you would assume, to the state capitol, and then they're reported at the federal level. But we don't know who these people are. Not unless, of course, there's some kind of an investigation, in which case we get to see these people, just like we saw all of those employees in Maricopa County in Arizona during the entire Kerry Lakes deal, which, by the way, her election was again stolen. Katie Hobbs didn't win that. It's painfully obvious. She didn't even campaign. She just sat in her basement like Joe Biden, and everybody just assumes that a person who doesn't campaign must win an election. But we did get to see these people. I mean, we got to see these employees, but it was only in a trial. It was only, unfortunately, in that judge deciding, that singular judge who got to decide whether or not there was actual voter fraud or not. It was pretty ridiculous. I watched the trial, whenever that was, a year ago. It was absolutely nuts. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching. Ample evidence of wrongdoing and voter fraud and them not following their own policies, but those people are still there, by and large. The vast majority are still there. So again, I'm not sure why anybody thinks that anything is going to change. And again, even Maricopa County has openly come out and said it's going to take days, if not weeks, for them to certify the election. And what is their excuse? Their excuse is large voter turnout, that they have more registered voters now than they've ever had. Well, again, that can be taken a lot of different ways. Some people would hear such a headline and they would say, well, that's because more people are voting for Donald Trump and there are more registered Republicans now than ever before. Well, that's an easy check, is it not? You would be able to easily check whether or not there are more new registered Republicans as opposed to, say, 2 years ago or even a year ago. That would be an easy find. That's not difficult to figure out. Although, the other angle is that there's more illegal aliens voting than ever before. And who are they going to vote for? Are they going to vote for Donald Trump so that, again, he can round them up and send them back? Probably not. Or again, are they openly saying that there's more votes than ever before and more registered voters than ever before because that gives them the opportunity to extend their vote counting, which means, again, increase the likelihood of cheating? It's exhausting. The whole thing is exhausting. But I'm going to leave it there for now. I might go back to that document in coming episodes here regarding federal laws for voter fraud and investigating voter fraud. I think it's a really neat document. It's pretty much plain language because it, again, exposes all of the people who didn't do the things that they were supposed to do when it's crystal clear they were supposed to investigate. Again, there was ample evidence. There was paper evidence. There were policies that were broken. There was video evidence. There was audio evidence. You name it. You caught endless individuals, again, certifying ballots based on signatures in the blink of an eye when it's supposed to take longer than that. And they weren't doing it correctly. So there has to be a sting operation going on regarding this. There has to be. That's why we haven't heard anything about it since. Okay, moving on. I want to get to this next document too, but I want to introduce this in a kind of a different way. I've honed in, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to rail on Charlie Kirk here for just a minute, even though I could probably dedicate an entire episode to his fraud and what a tool he is for the Jewish lobby and Zionist terrorists. First of all, before I even mention that, in the war video, the last war video, which would have been Wednesday night's war video, I have a clip in there from Beirut, Lebanon, of a residential building being brought to the ground by an Israeli rocket. Of course, it's probably our rocket that the Jews are using, and it's in broad daylight. And it's not an old building. I mean, it's filled with people, and they flat out bring the entire thing to the ground. It looked like at least a 20-story building, just brought right down to the ground in the blink of an eye. So, again, they're terrorists. This is what they are doing. They are genociding endless individuals, and they're also killing Christians. And this is why we do not live in some Judeo-Christian society. That's a complete lie and a total fabrication. And if I hear the term Nazi one more time, which I know we're going to hear it even more because it just came out the other day, Donald Trump's a Nazi. He likes Adolf Hitler and all this other stuff. If I keep hearing all of this, I'm telling you, I'm going to have a stroke, because the lack of knowledge among these multimillionaires is astounding to me. These are not well-read people. The Glenn Becks of the world, the Charlie Kirks of the world, everybody in the media, they're all so dumb, because I find this absolutely hilarious that someone like Kamala Harris will actually say the following, and I'm paraphrasing her, but she'll say, Donald Trump is a fascist. He aligns himself with Adolf Hitler, and he is a threat to our democracy. Based on the historic definitions and presence of those people and those words. As it turns out, believe it or not, Adolf Hitler is more effective than Donald Trump. He turned things around a whole lot quicker than Donald Trump did in a shorter amount of time. And, of course, back in the day, he would have tried and executed the actual traitors in his country. Certainly the communist traitors. But that's not happening right now in our country. Not to mention, again, fascism was created as a political party to counter Soviet Bolshevism. That's exactly what it was. So when she rounds it out and says he's a threat to our democracy, well, yes, because democracy is a dictatorship. Democracy is communism, and we don't live in a democracy. We are supposed to live in a constitutional republic. And yet I keep hearing the word democracy come out of these people's mouths. And it drives me up the wall. In fact, I'm going to keep railing before I get to Charlie Kirk, although he's a part of this, so you can just roll his stupid fat head around your own mind for a while if you want while I'm mentioning these people. But I'm going to be blunt with people here. I'm not a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I'm really not. I think she's completely irrelevant. She says democracy all the time, too. I don't care if she's all of a sudden now a registered Republican. Could care less. It doesn't matter. She has zero influence. Again, she's associated and has in the past with not only the Democrat Party, but the World Economic Forum. And I know people are like, well, that wasn't true. They just stole her picture and whatever. Look, the woman was in the National Guard and in the military. And that again, for me, that's suspicious enough, because she goes from being in that position to then, of course, being in Congress for a little while and then immediately kicked out, even though she was a Democrat. So maybe it's possible that she didn't play ball, that she didn't play their game. That's highly possible. And then they pulled her card and then, they kicked her to the curb. But even so, I just don't know how much of a real impact she's having on anything in a positive way. Same thing with, again, Tucker Carlson. I'm not, he's never going to say Jew. He's never going to say Zionism is the problem. He'll never say it. These people are owned. And then, of course, they all show up at Turning Point USA in their Turning Point Action Conference, or whatever the hell it was, in Duluth, Georgia the other day. Packed house. Charlie Kirk speaks, and I funded Turning Point USA. He didn't fund anything. I mean, let's get that straight. Jews handed him an organization to basically be, I don't know, the AA team to what was CPAC. CPAC was for the boomers, so to speak, certainly stereotypically, and then Turning Point USA came around Charlie Kirk was showing up on college campuses and quote-unquote roasting leftists. And then before you know it, he starts to get challenged by some people, and then he basically just starts screaming and whining like a child who doesn't get a piece of candy when he wants one. So let me say this before I get to Charlie even a little bit more. I'm starting to like RFK Jr. even more, believe it or not, and I'll tell you something. Here's why. I know that he's had Jewish ties before, and certainly with that one pedophilic rabbi, whatever the hell his name was, Rabbi Shlomo or whatever it was, the one that Candace Owens went after real hard. And again, that guy's dirtier than hell. But you can tell, based on the nonverbals, when RFK is on a stage with these other people, like he was in Duluth, Georgia, RFK operates better on his own. I don't think there's any doubting this. You can see how awkward it is when he's around these other people who love the, I would call them sensationalists, or they love the pomp and circumstance and the fireworks and all this other shit. You can kind of tell he doesn't like that. He's way more low-key because he has the facts. And he knows what the COVID shots did to people. Now, I wish he would go a little harder, more so than he already has. I mean, call out the virology lie while you're at it. But I do want to play some audio here real quick of him in Duluth, Georgia, because what he said here would have even Republicans nervous. And again, you heard Donald Trump say, we want Bobby, as he calls him. We want Bobby in the administration. And he's got a lot of ideas, but we may have to reel him back in a little bit. No, don't reel him back in. And Robert Kennedy Jr. would do well to not allow himself to be reeled in by somebody like Donald Trump or anybody else. He needs to be let off the hook completely. And he needs to say everything that he knows, all of the time, on a stage with a microphone, but not at events like this, with the likes of the Charlie Kirks and the what have you, because where was Charlie Kirk with all of the shot taking? Where was Charlie Kirk when it came to telling people about the harms of the shots and bringing that up on all of his so-called platforms? He was absent. He was absent. The most Charlie Kirk got involved with the entire COVID lie is he would grab onto the coattails of parents who were screaming at school board members, specifically in Arizona, for not letting them into their school board meetings to air their grievances about mask wearing, distancing, and everything else. I remember very clearly Charlie Kirk was standing in the back of a parking lot away from these other police officers, as the police officers were, I believe it was Scottsdale, Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, which is where he lives, if I'm also not mistaken. And there were other activists who are way more likely to go for the throat of the enemy than certainly Charlie Kirk would. Charlie Kirk, again, is weak. When the shooting starts, Charlie's going to run. He'll run like a third-grade girl right into the woods and dig a hole with his bare hands to get away from it, if he could. Man's a coward. I mean, period. But with that said, I remember him standing in the back of this parking lot, and these parents were at the front door of the building, as cops were again trying to keep them away because they're trying to enter a public meeting that they were allowed to attend. And then, of course, they were arresting parents. But one of these individuals, one of these activists was on his cell phone and he's videoing things. He sees Charlie Kirk in the back of the parking lot, standing there looking nervous. He walks up to Charlie and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, he's got that stupid look on his face, but he just goes, well, what's going on? I mean, are people getting arrested? Like, this is ridiculous. I don't know what's going on. He just looks like he's owned, and he looks like he doesn't want to be there. And he certainly doesn't want to ruffle feathers if it gets out of control regarding his own lack of knowledge on a particular subject. He doesn't want to get handcuffs on him. He doesn't want to do the right thing, and he had lockjaw when it came to the COVID bioweapon shots. Absolute lockjaw. But now he, of course, gets on these stages and he likes to think again that he's the cat's pajamas and that he can, quote unquote, take down a leftist or whatever else. But notice again how lots of videos, even though some are made, criticizing Charlie from conservatives, with conservative students going after him and saying, why is it that you support AIPAC? Why is it that you support this, that, or the other? Charlie has a default setting. He has a default rationalization, and it's 2 or 3 questions that he'll ask back to the crowd when he's been caught and when he's been exposed not knowing something. And I'll tell you what they are right now, and I'm telling you, you can listen to any audio of him when he's debating students, quote unquote, certainly more conservative students who are more knowledgeable on subjects than he is. Let's face it, the guy's a dimwit. And at the exact same time, and he's not well read at all. I mean, he clearly doesn't read books. Certainly not Mein Kampf. He would never even touch that. He'd probably, I don't know. He'd be afraid that he'd catch some disease or something. But he doesn't ever want to be wrong on the Jewish question. Not ever. So his default setting is this: when someone starts to go after him again about Jewish lobbies or Israeli influence and Zionist influence and what have you. Keep in mind, Charlie wore the small hat. He's taken the bribes. He's bent the knee. He's kissed the wall. He's kissed the ring. He's done it all. He's lit the menorah. I mean, spun the dreidel. He's done all of it. But his default setting is he'll look at them when he's backed into a corner. He'll look at the person who's asking him a question and he'll say usually 2 things. He'll say, do you believe that 6 million people died in the Holocaust? That's his first question. If they say no, he shuts down the entire conversation. Well, I can't answer any more of your questions because you just believe something that's patently false. That's what he'll say. So it's the old 6 gorillion question comes out first. His second default setting is he'll say, does Israel have a right to exist in their ancestral homeland? And if you say no, he'll shut the whole thing down again. Well, we can't have a conversation then because apparently you don't understand this, that, or the other. It isn't their country. It's never been. There is no Israel. There never has been. It was a nation that was created through an invasion, through paperwork, where it was an agreement to take Jews who were communists and terrorists from Europe and Germany specifically and move them over there. And then, of course, what did they do when they were over there? They slaughtered people. This is well known. This is not, you can't debate this. But then again, his rationalization for that is, well, I don't agree with everything the IDF does, but they're our greatest ally. I don't agree with everything that their government does, but they're our greatest ally. And they have a right to exist and we should support them and blah, 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 because we don't want Muslims on camels killing all of them and whatever else. It's absurd. So very quickly, let me just get to this document here. And again, it's not too long. It is approximately 18 pages, and I only want to read one paragraph right here at the beginning. I came across this document the other day online. God bless social media for this reason. Again, I don't mind making fun of people from time to time on social media, but the real purpose of it is for things like this, to come across documents like this, and then read these documents, and then share them with other people. It's about education. More than it is picking on people. At least I'd like to think so. That's how I try to utilize it as best I can anyway. Either way, this particular document is titled The Black Paper on the Jewish Agency and Zionist Terrorism. This is quite literally the front cover page, Memorandum to the United Nations Delegations. And the date of this is the 12th of March, 1948. Here's the first page. I'm going to read this first section here. It is titled Zionist Plotting and Totalitarianism. It says the following, quote, Zionists must bear responsibility for every drop of innocent blood shed in the Holy Land. It says these groups of international intriguers made broad, ambitious plans for the conquest of the Holy Land. They tried to secure a promise for entry into the country from Turkey and from Germany but failed. They obtained a promise from England in 1917. They formed a network of Zionist organizations and Zionist groups all over the world. They planned to plant pressure groups in the most important governments in the world. Through their advertisements and business interests, they have controlled the channels of propaganda in important countries. Where is this wrong yet? It's not. It goes on. They have tried to mobilize world Jewry for this task at the cost of browbeating, threatening, bullying, terrorizing, economically ruining, or assassinating the character of those who oppose them. Still not wrong. They have shamed Christians and intimidated them. Still not wrong. They have branded and smeared Gentiles who did not agree with them as anti-Semite. They have used against them the same methods of pressure and terror which they used against the Jews. With an elaborate machinery of propaganda, they have distorted facts about the Arabs and confused the issue on Palestine. They have created a net of spying all over the world in the Middle East, Palestine, Europe, the United States of America, and other countries. The activities of some Zionist spying organizations are well known to members of the Arab Higher Committee delegation and some United States government officials. The shadowing of people, tapping of their telephones, prying into their private lives, and attempting to obtain copies of private documents are only a few examples of the activities of Zionist spying organizations. The next paragraph says the Zionists have incited the Jews of Europe to migrate to Palestine, and to that end, they have been the real obstacle in the way of settlement of the refugees and displaced persons problem. With their campaign of propaganda among refugees, with organized efforts of the Jewish Agency and Haganah, if I'm saying that right, backed by unlimited tax-exempt funds from the United Jewish Appeal, they grouped illegal immigrants in European ports, chartered ships, and carried those immigrants, quote-unquote, as invaders to Palestine. The Zionists have purposefully and deliberately aggravated the refugees' problem. They have exploited the miseries of the refugees to win world sympathy for Zionism. They have even had the audacity to form kidnapping rings for abducting children and taking them to Palestine. The Zionists, moreover, bought and smuggled big quantities of arms, ammunition, and military equipment both from Europe and from America, and shipped them to Palestine. They built in Palestine small factories for manufacturing arms and ammunition and set up laboratories for bacteriological, it says, warfare. The Zionists set up in Palestine is totalitarian. Their youth movement and their system of education have molded a generation of Jewish fanatics. Their terrorist organizations which rob, terrorize, blackmail, and murder Jews, the obligatory conscription of young men and women, the spying on Jews who wish to leave the country, the terroristic measures applied to those Jews who, on many occasions, secretly made contact with Arabs and sought their help to leave the country, are only a few of many examples of the inroads on civil liberties made by Zionists on the Jews of Palestine. Their methods have been equaled only by the Nazis. Well, that last line isn't necessarily true. First of all, the German people never called themselves Nazis. It's a derogatory term. And number two, they were getting rid of communists. Big difference. They were actually getting rid of course, communist Zionists, because they were the problem in Europe, just like they're the problem now. I'm going to end the document there, but it goes on, and it again highlights numerous quotations from news reporters as to what exactly has been going on over there, or went over there, again, back in 1948. That's what this is in reference to. And there's a section here that says, who are the top men behind all of this? They have people in Jerusalem, New York, and London. There's a section here titled The Jewish Terrorist Organizations. Another section is titled Connection Between the Jewish Agency and the Terrorist Organizations. Finances of the Jewish terrorist organizations. Zionists invade Palestine with hordes of illegal immigrants. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? What's going on in our country? It says the next section says the policy of the Jewish Agency after the publication of the White Paper of 1939. Then more examples. And then you get toward the bottom. It talks about basically the Jewish Agency policy toward Arabs, old methods revealed, or revived rather, and then it goes through specific actions and terrorist actions, a bunch of them, all dated and timed. They have all of the names of the people involved and what they specifically did, absolutely horrible, including, even in this so-called Arab document, they highlight the persecution of Christians, consistently, as a matter of fact. But you know what you don't hear in this document? The word Holocaust. It doesn't pop up once. Again, an 18-page document having to do with Jewish Zionist terrorism. You'd think that if the Holocaust were real, they would mention that within this document as if to say, well, the Jews are using the Holocaust as an excuse to engage in whatever they're engaging in and basically use it as a crutch or an emotional rationalization or a backstop. Nope. The word Holocaust isn't in this document one time. Not once. But remember, Charlie Kirk wants people to believe that 6 million Jews died in the so-called Holocaust. There weren't 6 million Jews in Europe in World War II. Or before World War II. There weren't 6 million. Again, I've been over the 6 million number before. It was written about in papers. It's because, again, it's satanic numbers. That's why they just say 6 over and over and over again. 666. That's the whole point. You see, this is where somebody like Stu Peters, now that he's finally awake, and that's taken long enough, but, he came around rather quickly, I think. It was only a matter of time. I mean, you can only hang out on Gab so long before you start to figure out the truth. But again, somebody like him or somebody like Ken O'Keefe, or all these other individuals, again, who know far more than even Stu Peters does, they would do well to approach Charlie Kirk at one of these events and say, "Hi, Charlie, my name is so-and-so. My name is Ken O'Keefe, and I have a couple of questions for you." You would watch Charlie Kirk shit his pants in the blink of an eye because he wouldn't be able to handle anything that came at him. Because, as I said earlier, his backstop is to simply shut it down when he's confronted with the realities of the world that we live in. He doesn't want to believe for a minute that he's wrong on anything. And as I've said before, again, he didn't start Turning Point USA. That was given to him. It is a Zionist organization that, again, is used to control the youth, like a Zionist organization would, in order to manipulate them into, again, believing that they can be knowledgeable and active for the quote-unquote conservative cause, but they're being led around by Zionists. There's no doubt about it. Again, they might not like Fox News, but they need to still be controlled to some extent, so that's why Turning Point USA exists. I'm shocked that more people don't confront Charlie Kirk on a constant basis, even full-grown adults, like older people. Don't just let it be college students, because again, he loves talking down to college students, regardless of who they are, and regardless, again, of their stance on a particular issue. He likes to believe that he's the most knowledgeable, but an older adult needs to get in Charlie's face and say, "I was voting before you were born. I've read more than you have. You're a dope, and here's why." And then watch Charlie shut it down, because he will. It's his only defense. Okay. Jab-related stuff. Let me get to this before I get to the education stuff. I'm going to switch those two subjects, because I only have 2 education things to play. Both are generally the same. They both have to do with levies. And man, it's hilarious because these school districts are begging for levies now. They're just begging for people to vote. Don't worry, we're not going to tax you. We're just going to tax everybody around you. And not that, that's not going to have an impact on you or your property, but it'll crush everybody else. So please give us the money that we need to stay afloat. It's astounding. Anyway, Okay, jab-related stuff. Let me start here. Very quickly, side note, the whole Donald Trump at McDonald's thing, followed by the E. coli outbreak story, that was hilarious. That was all designed to shift the algorithm. You've heard me speak on that before. You're well versed in that tactic. That's exactly what they do. Again, they create a story out of thin air with similar keywords. Of course, McDonald's being the largest keyword in this particular story, in order to override the Donald Trump story of course, him serving fries and burgers at McDonald's. Which, by the way, again, that entire thing, as we all know, was staged. They shut down the entire McDonald's for the day. They only had a certain number of employees there to begin with. No one could come in and eat. The place wasn't really open. It was just, it was a stunt. But even so, he did show up and he talked about the oil that is used in their fries and all their other products, and certainly in the fast food industry, and how it's not good. That was interesting. And then, of course, RFK spoke about it as well on X, and there you go. So, it's chess to some extent. I fully get it. But you would think that would piss off McDonald's to some extent too. But, of course, there was a time when they didn't use the oil that they use now, and things were a little bit better potentially. So anyway, with that aside, let me play this RFK audio. Again, this is fascinating, and this had to have even Republicans nervous as all get out. Because again, he's telling the truth. And I like RFK when he's not around other people. He looks nervous when he's around other people because you can tell that he knows more than they do and he doesn't want to be around them all the time. But when he's on his own and he's talking to a group of people, he cuts loose. So give this a listen. Again, this was in Duluth, Georgia, in 3, 2, 1.
And I read an article from the New York Times that Bill Gates had just donated $50 million to Kamala Harris's campaign. And the article said that it was the first donation that he's made in 20 years, that he stayed out of politics, that he's been bipartisan. It was a dark money donation. He didn't intend for it to be public. He routed the donation through a 501c4, which was an organization that was set up to conceal large money donations to the Harris campaign. Now, he said, when the Times asked him, he said he had donated zero in the 2020 campaign when President Biden was running against President Trump. And he said this campaign is different than any other. And so he felt the need to do this. Now, do you think Bill Gates made that donation out of a patriotic impulse? Do you think he made it out of a humanitarian impulse? Do you think he made it because he wants global health? Or because he wants to make America healthy again? Well, there was something else, another article about Bill Gates that came out today that said he's just been indicted. He's been indicted in the Netherlands for lying to the public about the COVID vaccine. And he's going to have to go to trial. Do you think that he wants to go to trial here in the United States of America? You think maybe that's one of the reasons he chose to give $50 million to Kamala Harris?
Again, who else in the United States, and certainly in the United States government, lied about the shots? What other CEOs lied about the shots? What other people lied about the shots? That list is endless. And RFK saying that's got to make all of them a little bit nervous. I mean, he is not on their good side, which is a good thing. But again, the business of the $50 million to Kamala Harris's campaign, I mean, she's not going to win any real election. So what is it for? Is it for her own legal defense regarding anything that might take place in the future? Again, if it's a military tribunal, it's not going to matter. Is it some attempt to, I don't know, have Bill Gates extradited? If he were to be guilty, well, that would imply that, again, Kamala Harris and or Joe Biden would have to bring him back in some capacity, if they even could, which I'm not sure that they could. But this, again, of Bill Gates going to court is a real story. This is from the Watchtower. It was also on Gateway Pundit. It says, in a significant development, Bill Gates has lost a lawsuit and is scheduled to appear in a Dutch court. It says, philanthropist and founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recently fired an incident against the 7 Dutch plaintiffs who want to take him to court because they accuse him of a torturous act as a participant of the project The Great Reset, quote unquote. The hearing was on September 18th of 2024 in the District Court of Leeuwarden in Friesland, Netherlands, and the verdict was on October 16th of 2024. Gates, who did not appear before the District Court on September 18th, but was represented by a lawyer from something, Pellis Ricken, whatever that is, stated that he believes that a Dutch judge is not competent to judge him because Gates is an American citizen. It says both parties gave a plea in court that afternoon. One of the victims, who was very ill, was also given the opportunity to make a plea. She was no longer able to speak and was represented by her father. It was an emotional plea. Several recordings in Dutch are available from the Bill Gates case on September 18th. Again, here's the entire judgment. Basis of the claim: the dispute resolves around the question of whether this court has jurisdiction to hear the claims of others against Gates in the main proceedings. There's other information. And I just think time is going to tell on this one. Again, we would like to see him hang for his crimes. There's no doubt about that. There have to be communications about the intentional nature of all of this, what it was really intended for, which we know it was depopulation. There's no science involved. There's no scientific method being applied, none of that. So, yeah, this is a larger degenics scheme here, no doubt about it. Okay. Along that same lines regarding shots, 2 quick stories here, actually 3, with a bit of a warning. Here's the first one again from Natural News, just the headline: all recombinant vaccines in adjuvants, not just COVID-19 vaccines, are now implicated in DNA contamination scandal. Again, this should kind of go without saying. That's exactly what shots do, regardless of the vaccination. They ruin DNA. They bring about autoimmune conditions. This is all shot-induced. All of it. There's also this one. This is from the Burning Platform, and it was titled, 5-year-old develops autism after being forced to get 18 vaccines in one day. Again, who's surprised by that? I mean, I'm surprised that it would be court-ordered in this case, which is absolutely horrific. And even Karen McDonald, I believe that's her first name, the Oakland County prosecutor in Oakland County, Michigan, the one who took the Crumblies to trial, when she was a judge, she did the same thing. In a divorce proceeding and in a divorce case, the mother was put on trial in front of course, the judge who made the ultimate decision, which was Karen McDonald, to basically say that you have to vaccinate your child. And it was a court-ordered vaccination request. And if she didn't do it, then she would go to jail. This has to be illegal in our country in the future, across the nation. Again, It's a level of horror that I almost don't even have the words for. And it's just beyond terrible. So this particular story says, as a part of a custody battle, a Tennessee judge ordered a family to vaccinate all 3 of their children, all of whom have never been vaccinated. It says, 5-year-old Isaac immediately became ill and was eventually diagnosed with severe regressive autism. In 2016, David Iben moved his wife and 3 children from Chicago to Jamestown in rural Tennessee with high hopes of a new and calmer life. But the dream turned into a nightmare for David and his children in December of 2019 when divorce proceedings and a subsequent custody battle resulted in the forced vaccination of their children and changed the family's fortunes forever. Iben said that his ex-wife decided, quote, this wasn't the life she wanted, unquote. So they were attempting to develop a parenting plan in family court when Tennessee Judge Todd Burnett, quote, pulled up the vaccine issue, unquote, after discovering the couple's children were unvaccinated, and forced the parents to vaccinate their children. Iben's 2 oldest children, daughter Hannah and son Joseph, were spared significant adverse events following their vaccination, but his youngest son Isaac wasn't so fortunate. After receiving 18 vaccinations in one day, Isaac developed severe regressive autism. Today he requires around-the-clock care. The judge should hang by the neck until dead. They should find that judge and execute him. And if you want to do it as an eye for an eye, inject him with 18 vaccinations and see how he likes it. Give him the COVID shots too. Give him 3 of those to make sure he's boosted. These people are disgusting. This is happening in our country on a constant basis. Drives me up the wall. Speaking of vaccination, there's this too. FluMist. FluMist.com. Influenza vaccine. Live intranasal. Coming as soon as next year, the only at-home flu vaccine delivered with FluMist home, quote unquote, which is probably trademarked. It says the same nasal spray flu vaccine that you can already get at a pharmacy or doctor's office. Nasal spray flu vaccine for ages 2 to 49 years of age. And it says FluMist is recommended by the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Home delivery anticipated to be available for the 2025-26 flu season. Note to self, don't take FluMist. Honest to God. And who made it? AstraZeneca. And there you go. There will be people who do this to their children beforehand, before ever getting sick, thinking it's a preventative measure for something that doesn't really exist. They'll think it's for something that exists, but the flu is not real. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the Wireless Body Area Network ties in with the last episode on Wednesday. 2 stories here, both Apple Watch related. The first one, this was from the Daily Mail, the headline, Apple Watch spookily predicts flu and COVID days before symptoms start, as users say they had no idea they were getting ill. It's evidence. This is proof right here of the Wireless Body Area Network. Your Apple Watch is telling you that you're sick before you have symptoms. How is that possible? Yes, you're wearing this poisonous wireless cancer-causing device on your wrist all day long. And then what is it doing to make you ill? Is it increasing the signal and the wireless signal to your entire body? And then you end up with weakness, fatigue, lightheadedness, maybe a fever, perhaps vomiting. And then you think you have COVID. So because you're retarded, you go and you take a COVID test, which isn't real and is completely fake and tests for nothing and is fraudulent. You do whatever you do. You spit on 5 or 12 of them. One pops up, says you have COVID, and then you tell yourself you have COVID. It's proof that the watches are making people ill. It's that simple. And then there's this. This is the next one. sleep apnea notifications on your Apple Watch. The health, whatever the hell it is, the health application that comes preloaded on people's phones and preloaded on Apple Watches now has a sleep apnea notification. Here's what it says on Apple's actual website. It says the sleep apnea notification features can look for breathing disturbances while you're sleeping and notify you if they show consistent signs of moderate to severe sleep apnea. Don't let anybody tell you that the wireless body area network and the biodigital convergence isn't real. I'm telling you, this is it. This is the most pervasive and worst problem that is going on right now. And it's happening quite literally under everybody's skin and under everybody's noses. But it's right here. And it's being sold to people as a convenience. It says about sleep apnea and breathing disturbances, which, by the way, this directly implies too, that not only do you have to be wearing your watch the entire time you're sleeping, but it of course has to be attached to the internet. So all day long and all night long, you're wearing a wireless device on your person if you have sleep apnea or any other illness that you might think you have, or that computers will tell you you have, or doctors will tell you you have. And then they will sell this to you as a convenience, so you'll be wearing this wireless cancer-causing device on your body all day long and all night long, all of the time. That means your entire body is hooked to the internet all of the time. Not to mention the proximity aspect of this, depending on who else you're sleeping with. That means that the people sleeping next to you, or person sleeping next to you, is rubbing up against that phone and in close proximity to a wireless device all night long, which isn't good for them either. Imagine falling asleep on your watch. I mean, physically falling asleep on it. It's on your wrist, and then your chest is on it all night long. Or it's behind your back, or it's next to your head under your pillow or behind your pillow. You're going to be giving yourself radiation poisoning constantly. Here's what it says again on their site about sleep apnea and breathing disturbances. Sleep apnea is a respiratory condition where you experience repeated disruptions in your breathing while you sleep. These breathing disturbances are fairly common, and people typically experience a few disturbances at night. Your alcohol intake, upper respiratory illnesses, and even some medications can lead to elevated breathing disturbances, including, of course, being overweight. It says when you wear your Apple Watch to bed, it uses the accelerometer, there we go, to look for breathing disturbances while you sleep. These are categorized as elevated or not elevated. Over a 30-day evaluation period, if you consistently experience elevated breathing disturbances, you receive a notification letting you know it identified signs of sleep apnea. And then it says if you have not been diagnosed with sleep apnea, you should talk to your doctor. There you go. I love this. I love it. What retard would do this? You're flat out believing what your watch tells you. You have sleep apnea. Get to your doctor immediately. It, of course, runs through the entire process. You need an Apple iWatch Series 9 or later, so go out and get your iWatch because it might save your life. Opens up a chart attached to the health app on your cell phone, charts it over the course of months, and then there you go. It says the sleep apnea notification feature is not intended to diagnose, treat, or aid in the management of sleep apnea. Well, then what the fuck is it for? It's designed to get you to panic. It's designed to get you addicted to an Apple Watch. It's designed to hook you up to the wireless body area network, the WBAN, and then they got you. Unbelievable. It says not all people with sleep apnea receive a notification. Well then, Again, what does it do? What does it actually do? Does it make you a sandwich? What does it do? They're telling you it doesn't do anything. If you believe you have sleep apnea, talk to your doctor. All this is just slight persuasion, because that's all it takes for a human being to actually believe that this is a thing. Unbelievable. This is nuts. And people will do this. Honest to shit, they'll do it. They'll sleep with their thing. Oh, well, I've always wondered if I've had sleep apnea. And they'll sleep with their watch. But the watch can create the sleeping disturbance. The wireless network that's hooked to the watch, which is hooked to you, can create remotely the sleeping disturbance. Do people not know this? They must not. Wireless body area network, ladies and gentlemen, it's direct proof. And they tell you, as I just read, on the support page for this, again, it's support.apple.com/ENUS120031. That's the website. It's the first one that pops up in any search engine when you type in sleep apnea Apple Watch. They openly tell you that it doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't diagnose it. It doesn't help you. Talk to your doctor if you think you have it. Give me a break. Unbelievable. All right. I'm telling you, don't let anybody tell you that the wireless body area network isn't a real thing. It's very real. And it's designed to make you ill. That's it. It's designed to make you ill. It's designed to make you dead and broke in between. Because people will believe it and rush right to their doctor. Amazing. Now, in conclusion, speaking of making people broke, school levies. 2 pieces of audio. Give this first one a listen. Jesse James sent this my way right in his backyard of Clarkston, Michigan, ladies and gentlemen, and their school district is begging for a levy. Listen to the word usage that they use in this audio too. Absolutely hilarious. They talk down to everybody like they're stupid. It's amazing. That's reason enough to never vote for a levy. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
On November 5th, Clarkson Community Schools will ask community members to vote on the non-homestead operating millage renewal.
If approved, this ballot proposal would allow us to continue levying 18 mills on non-homestead properties, such as business, commercial properties, second homes, and rentals.
It will not affect the taxes on your primary residence.
This millage funds our general operating budget, which directly supports student programs, staffing, and essential services.
Our community has approved the operating millage several times since its inception in 1994, when the state first began requiring all public schools to levy the tax to ensure full student funding.
This renewal is projected to generate approximately $10 million annually for Clarkston Community Schools.
To learn more about the non-homestead millage renewal and its impact, including how and where to vote, please visit our website.
Remember, this is a renewal, not a new tax, and does not affect primary residences or qualifying agricultural properties.
Please plan to vote on or before November 5th.
And go Wolves.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves.
Go Wolves. I love it. Right at the end, the superintendent. And this is just too funny. Too funny. Go Wolves. Go Wolves. Go Wolves. Go Wolves. Go Wolves. Go Woofers. Woofeses. Oh my God. The American education system in a nutshell. Right there. Too funny. Don't worry, it's just a renewal. It's the renewal of us grifting the ever-living hell out of you. You've been doing this forever, so it's no sweat off your back. We're just going to tax everybody around you. Don't worry, we won't tax your property, rather. We're not going to tax where you actually live. We're just going to tax everything around you that you utilize. Businesses, other properties, where you buy your groceries, things of that nature. And then, of course, their costs are going to have to go up on all of the products that they sell because they have to spend more in property taxes. But that's not going to have an impact on you. No, no, no. Do they actually believe that people are this dumb? They must. It's the only explanation. In that video, they're all dressed the same. It's the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the high school principal, a board trustee, somebody else. They're all mispronouncing the word wolves. And of course, they're proving to everybody that they are tools of government. Not a single one of them, not one, bowed out and said, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I don't support this. I don't support increased taxes. Even for us as a school district. I understand I work here. I understand I might be the superintendent, but I can't support this. And I'm not even going to ask because, again, it's going to create way too much division. Our job is to just teach children the truth and then go home. But again, people are feeling the pinch. People are broke. People can't spend money on the things that they used to spend it on. But they actually want individuals in the area to give it to local brainwashing institutions. This is how absent these people are from the realities of reality. It's sad. It really is sad. They're just tools. They're being used and they have no idea why and what for. And they don't even care. Here's the last one. This is Fort Bend County, Texas, sent to me by a listener of the show. Thank you for sending it also. Fort Bend ISD is shelving plans for a new elementary school that was supposed to be funded by a $1.2 billion bond voters approved last year. Long story short on this, although I'll play the audio and you'll hear it, they voted for this bond issue to raise their taxes, to build a new elementary school, and then the board said, nah, we don't want to build the elementary school right now. So we're just going to keep that money, even though we've spent millions on the land that we were going to build it on. But we're just going to keep that cash. And oh, by the way, we're probably going to come back with another tax levy in the future, so buckle up and get prepared. School districts hate you. They hate you. Whether you send your children there or not, they think they just flat out deserve your money. Don't give it to them. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
There is uproar in Fort Bend County this evening where voters say they have been cheated out of a new elementary school. They thought they were voting for the school when they approved a $1.2 billion bond last year. However, now the district is backtracking. ABC 13's Luke Jones is live in the Harvest Green subdivision where the school would have been built. The big question tonight, if this district campaigned on building the school, we want to know, Luke, can they legally use this money for something else?
Yeah, you know, a lot of the folks out here are saying total bait and switch. Yet, experts we consulted with say even if that is the case, there's really not a whole lot you can do here. And some of that hinges on the way things were worded on last year's ballot.
We need an elementary school to be built now.
And Alyssa Ragavina thought she was getting one when she voted for a $1.2 billion bond last year. Fort Bend ISD said it would use $47 million of the money to build an elementary school on this site it bought near Harlem and Harvest Garden. But Monday, despite getting the bond money, the district voted to scrap the school in order to plug an $80 million budget deficit.
You have a whole community of people, I mean, really all of Fort Bend ISD who voted in favor of a bond almost under false pretenses.
Bait and switch has become part of our everyday life.
But legal analyst Brian Wise says when it comes to political speech, campaigning for a school bond, it's not illegal.
And the First Amendment says that political speech has got to be robust, unfettered, and sometimes maybe even a little misleading.
On the 2023 ballot, the district doesn't explicitly say they'll build a new school on this site, but they do in this campaign video. And on their website.
They don't have to follow through on any of that.
And nobody is going to claim that there was this monumental bad faith on the part of the school board. Only that we couldn't do what we set out to do.
And if it's any consolation, the district says, look, had we gone ahead and built this school, it would have been underutilized until at least the 2033 school year. As it is, they've already spent more than $2 million acquiring this land. They may still build something here, and they're actually going to be discussing that at their November 4th meeting, discussing if they should have taxpayers approve another bond to pay for that. But now we're live in Northeast Fort Bend County. Luke Jones, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
School boards, ladies and gentlemen, school boards. They're government, and government hates you. It's that simple. Bait and switch. Yep. Whoops-a-daisy, we just lied to everybody. No biggie. We'll tax you again in the future. Trust us this time. Trust us. It'll be for the elementary school in the future. Yeah, it's probably 10 years away or whatever, but, that's the way that it is. They're also in the property business, as I've said before. These school districts all across the nation are realtors. They're in the property business. They scoop it up, they'll sell it to the highest bidder, they'll pocket that cash, use it for some stupid government project, like DEI training or whatever the hell, and then they'll waste everybody's money and waste everybody's time. If you keep going to government and you keep participating in government and government-related activities, you're always going to be lied to. You're always going to be used. You're always going to be abused. This is the way that it works. Government, ladies and gentlemen, Greek and Latin for mind control. And that concludes the episode. I'm exhausted. I hope you are too, but exhausted with knowledge. You see, the truth. It will make us free. Have a great weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free and check those documents out if you are interested in the Government Documents tab on AmericanEducationFM.com. And I will catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.